came to pass on the third day, when it was morning, that there were thunderclaps and lightning flashes, and a thick cloud was upon the mountain, and a very powerful blast of the shofar, and the entire nation that was in the camp shuddered. On the morning of the third day, Moses brought the people out of the camp toward God, and they took their places at the foot of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke. The Lord had descended upon it in fire. The smoke went up like the smoke of a kiln, while the whole mountain trembled violently. As the blast of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses would speak, and God would answer him in thunder. When the Lord descended upon Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain, the Lord summoned Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. You know what's interesting about that description? Moses goes up, and even so he goes to the top of the mountain, God comes down, no matter what. You just can't get to that height. So Shavuot, from the Hebrew word weeks, is the holiday where Jews celebrate the day that the Torah was received at Har Sinai, Mount Sinai. And it's one of the three major pilgrimage festivals in our calendar, along with Pesach and Sukkot. And so we would go where we would go to visit and bring offerings at the temple in Jerusalem. Shavuot falls exactly 7 weeks, hence the name, after the start of Passover. And the lead up to the holiday is marked, and this is kind of an interesting thing, by a sphira, which is a counting of numbers, of each night between the second night of Passover and before Shavuot begins. And that, as we probably all know, with what we do here, is called the Omer, the counting of the Omer. So and then here a statement, Ki Adonai Elohecha Meviacha el Eretz Tova, Eretz Nachale Mayim, Ayanot, Uthomot, Yotzim Babik'a Uvahar. And here, the real important one that I want to talk about, Eretz Chita Se'ora, V'gefen U'te'ena V'rimon, Eretz Zayit Shemen U'devash. So in English, or for the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land filled with streams and springs and fountains issuing from plain and hill, a land of wheat and barley, of vines, figs, and pomegranates, a land of olive trees and dates and honey. Rimonim, we're going to talk about these 7 fruits and foods. Rimonim are pomegranates, a very beautiful and majestic fruit. They were usually eaten fresh, although occasionally they were used to make juice or wine, or sun-dried for use when the fresh fruit was out of the season. Wheat, chita. The ancient Israelites cultivated both wheat and barley. These 2 grains are mentioned first in the biblical list of the 7 species of the land of Israel, and we just talked about those species, and their importance as food in ancient Israelite cuisine, as seen as in the celebration of the barley harvest of the festival of Shavuot. And here is the barley. It was the most important grain during the biblical period, and this was recognized ritually on the second day of Passover in the Omer offering, consisting of barley flour from the newly ripened crop. Te'ena, figs, were cultivated throughout the land of Israel, and fresh or dried figs were part of the daily diet. The common way of preparing dried figs was to press them and press them into cake. Zayit, the olive, was a major element in the seven species. Olive oil was not only used for food and cooking, but also for lighting, sacrificial offerings, ointment, and anointment for the priests and kings. The olive tree and its oil have been major components in the culture and rituals of ancient Israel. Tamar, dates, a fruit that's mentioned in the stories of Moses, David, and Tamar, whose branches provided food, shelter, and sustenance for our people. And for so many years was the recognized symbol of the kingdom of Judah, or the 12 tribes. One of the oldest cultivated fruits. Several accounts in the Torah indicate that bee honey existed in Israel. The story of Samson, he takes them to the carcass of a lion. But most of the honey consumed in Israel, in ancient Israel, was fruit honey, extracted from dates and grapes. Anavim, grapes. It was a land where the grapes grew in such large clusters, as reported by the expedition of Hebrew spies sent into Canaan. And these grape clusters were so large that they carried them on a stick between two men. And because there are pictures of that. Art. This gift from God was meant to be enjoyed, and men were not to go to war until they had tasted of their own grape harvest. So essentially, Shavuot helped reinstate the agricultural focus on the land while emphasizing the return to our ancient homeland. The harvest is connected with so many aspects of Jewish history. The story of Ruth, to the renewal of agricultural settlement in the land of Israel, certainly in the 20th century, by the kibbutz and moshav organizations. The story of Shavuot in the 20th century takes on an added meaning when Jews, mostly from Eastern Europe, started to settle in Israel and establish agricultural communities. Suddenly, Jews were once again tilling the land and reaping wheat in the summer. In the kibbutz movement, Shavuot was resurrected in a way because a lot of these chalutzim were not especially religious, but it was resurrected as an agricultural holiday. The agricultural produce was presented with jubilance, processions, singing, dancing. I'd like to play you this beautiful little song called La Kotzrim Hidad, and these are harvest cheers. And what I'm going to do in this lecture is present you with a number of songs that are from the first, second, and third aliyot from Eastern Europe. And I love that music. It's pre-independent Palestine or pre-independent Israel. And you know, there are so many wonderful composers that come out of that musical tradition. And here we go. La Kotzrim Hidad. And if I can give you, I should have given you the translation. Pool applied to her, a mountain wreath is adorned with dawn, valleys flattened at cereal filled gold. The sound of the harvest is a song that you have sung. It's a golden rose. The sound of the harvest is a song that you have sung. You have a golden scroll. Another song that's wonderful is a song called Shibolet Basadeh, an ear of the grain in a field. It's beautiful, the poem, and you can look at the poem, I believe, when this film goes on. Again, from the same period, probably written in the early 20th century, an ear of grain in the field, bowed in the wind, from the weight of its seed, which is great, and in the expanse of the mountains, the day already rises, the sun is fine gold.
שיבולת בשדה קוראה ברוח בעומס גרעינים קירב ובמרחב הרים יום כבר יפוח השמש קדם וזהב אורו אוי אורו שורו בין הכפרים כמה הם בשלה כבר על פני הכרים קצרו שלחו מגל בו את ראשית הקציר את ראשית הקציר שדה שעורים כמה זרחה עודרת שפע יבול וברכה לקראת בו הקוצרים בזוהר מזהרת חרש לעומר מחכה אבו הניפו נירו לכם ניר חגלה כמה את ראשית הקציר קצרו שלחו מגל בו את ראשית הקציר שיבולת בשדה קוראה ברוח בעומס גרעינים קירב ובמרחב הרים יום כבר יפוח השמש קדם וזהב אורו אוי אורו שורו בין הכפרים כמה הן בשלה כבר על פני הכרים קצרו שלחו מגל בו את ראשית הקציר את ראשית הקציר את ראשית הקציר.
You know, these songs do not come from the traditions of the synagogue, but if you do go to shul, sometimes during the service you will hear the rabbi, and if there's a cantor, uttering these kind of songs, and they're beautiful, but they're kind of Israeli patriotic songs more than very, very different than what the liturgy normally would give you. And so I want to talk about also a guy by the name of Max Helfman, born in 1901 in Poland. His father actually was a cantor, a local teacher and in the town that he was born in, Radzin, whose choir Max Helfman sang in as a child. He sang in his father's choir, and I have to say that really has a great import for me, because when I was, I would say, yeah, I mean, when I was 5 and 6, I would sing in my father's choir, and then we went to Israel, so I didn't sing there, obviously, for other reasons. But then when we came back as a young boy, maybe 11, 12, through the age of bar mitzvah, I sang in his choir, and it really, I have to say, I gave a concert yesterday, and one of the cantors, there were 4 young cantors, with the cantor of the Emmanuel Synagogue, who was a beautiful voice. And then there was another cantor from New Jersey, a woman, also beautiful voice. And then there was a really wonderful scholar-like cantor of a baritone, also beautiful. And the person I want to talk to you is about a guy by the name of Danny Mendelson. I don't know if you remember that name, but those of you who sang in the choir, at Bethel, I believe it may have been 2011, it was, or 12, something like that. We did a concert with Jackie Mendelson and his son, okay? And we did Ritze, and the choir comes in, Ritze, and we did I believe the Grieg piano concerto on that concert too. It was a wonderful concert, but the point I'm trying to make is that boy, his son, comes from a terrific tradition. It's very similar and very different, but similar in the sense of the import from father to son, as Naftali Hershtig has on Natani Hirschtig, is his son. There's a natural genealogy that just allows them to do what they do. Anyway, and all of them have sung, all of these people who have that cantorial genealogy, and I cautiously count myself among them, of singing in your father's choir. It's what it is. It's what happens. So this man Max Helfman has done that. When he was 8 years old, his parents moved, and him obviously, to New York, and he became a very, very sought after boy alto in the New York Orthodox synagogue choirs. He then becomes a composer, and a very good one. He presents a pageant play set for this holiday of Shavuot, called Hag HaBikurim, which is, you notice on our first page, that's what we called Shavuot, which means the festival of first fruits. So it's, I want you to realize, or if you can, how swayed toward the agricultural ideal of this holiday, and especially in Israel, where agriculture means so much, and certainly did throughout its history. And as I mentioned, also the pioneers were not all especially Orthodox. They wanted to use these holidays certainly as part of their tradition, but more as a vehicle to grow the country. And so, how do you do those vehicles? And I'm going to point back to the different style of melody in synagogue music and these songs that we're singing here, is that there's a kind of there's an Israeli nationalistic feel to the thing. It's very, very energetic, and yes, we can, that kind of thing. So anyway, this is a piece called Shibolet Basadeh, and actually, Atzei Zeitim Omrim. That's what we're doing. That's right. So this is from the Hag HaBikurim set of music, and I think you might recognize the melody. What I'd like to do before we do this is ask you, has anyone recognized the melodies from before? Those other two melodies that I played. You don't have to answer now, but just keep that maybe for the end, and you can tell me. Atzei Zeitim Omdim, I can't imagine you don't know this melody, but this is a wonderful arrangement by the wonderful Jewish composer Max Helfman. Beautiful song. And, the thing is, this was conducted by a wonderful, maybe the premier Jewish musicologist of the last 50 years, a guy named Neil Levin. And quite frankly, Neil Levin is the gentleman that started me on some of those orchestrations for Jewish music that I've done now, more than two of them, let's put it that way. So he was conducting, and this is found on the Milken Archive of Jewish Music. He was responsible for about 50 or 60 of their albums. I would recommend looking into it if you want to know anything about Jewish music. It's very powerfully put together with some of the best ensembles in the world that can do this Jewish stuff. So again, I want to, well, that's that with that. I'd like to now talk about a beautiful piece called Sisi Admat HaSharon. This is, let's just look at the poem. Once again, all the energy of the Yaron River is in you. Once again, in you, the hopes of the people are flourishing. Here is the land of Sharon, a valley like a fresh garden, and from the sons of lightning unto remembrance shall again be planted in thee. I mean, it has a kind of a prayer-like text, but very powerfully talking about the renewal. It's all about renewal, the building of the state of Israel. So you could see how these Chalutzim and those who followed them used this text as a way to inspire those to build Eretz Yisrael. And we're talking about after it became, before, in the 20th century, let's put it that way. The composer is a man by the name of Nahum Nardi, and we have sung some of his stuff before as a choir. I can't remember exactly the name of the tune, but I remember I can hear Matt's voice and Harold's voice singing in that recording we made, I believe is in 1998 for the 40th anniversary. What was it, 40th? 50th anniversary of the State of Israel. And it's a little more than, it's going to be 75, or it is 75 now. Wow, time's passed. But this is sung by one of maybe the most incredible soprano that I've ever worked with, and her name was Ida Ray Kahana. This is a beautiful rendition of the Sisi Admat HaSharon, my orchestration. What a beautiful voice. I always get so taken by her singing, and what a wonderful, beautiful person to work with and just to hang out with. So again, my point being, I'm hoping, as I said before, that you notice, Shavuot actually comes right after Yom HaAtzmaut, a couple, 3 weeks later, depending on the date. And it's perfect. It's perfect for that occasion. Shavuot has its origins in the ancient midsummer harvest celebrations of the Canaanites. This is pre-Israelite. Actually, it's the ancient people from which Israelite society comes from, and I believe it's the Bronze Age. So these early religious celebrations in which revelers rejoiced in the harvesting of wheat were local affairs, probably celebrated with, a communal thrashing. Everybody would go into the fields and cut the wheat and separate the wheat from the chaff and that kind of thing. All that started to change in the 7th and 8th centuries, BCE, of course, when the kings in Jerusalem and the priesthood kind of consolidated the power under one government. And mostly, who really benefited from that was that these rites that they did, rites, were done, could only be done in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. And quite frankly, because of that, it created a sense of peoplehood for the people of the land. And that's a good thing. Shavuot is referenced, there's the Beit HaMikdash. Shavuot is referenced as one of the 3 pilgrimages, or Shaloshet Regalim, of the book of Shemot. In its earliest stages in the first temple period, Shavuot was kind of a sister celebration to Passover, the first of those 2 major agricultural holidays. Shavuot marked the end of the Omer, the Atzeret, the counting of the Omer, of that 49-day period between the harvest of barley, which was Passover, and the harvest of wheat. Sukkot, which is the 3rd of the agricultural holidays, involves the same counting pattern, albeit much shorter, in this case with a not 49-day period, but a 7-day period between the start of the holiday and the holiday called Shmini Atzeret, the 7 days of gathering. And what do they mean by the 7 days of gathering? Again, Shalosh Regalim, it doesn't mean 3 feet. It means the 3 holidays that the Jewish population in the Israelites walked from, and it could be far away, walked to Jerusalem. It couldn't have been that far away. Can you imagine spending 3 times a year walking 60 miles? No, that's crazy, but who knows? I don't know. Maybe that's what was done. So, by the way, the concept of counting each day represents a kind of a spiritual preparation and anticipation. What's the use of counting the Omer of 48, 49? Well, actually, I shouldn't say those numbers. We're in 47 right now. We're in the 47th day. So the idea of anticipating, getting yourself spiritually ready for the beginning of the month not at the beginning, but when the Torah was given on Mount Sinai. And one could say, on this day, the children of Israel are transformed into a living, breathing nation because they have the 10 Commandments on their journey to the one land that we can forever call home. And speaking of the Omer, here is another one of those early Chalutz kind of tunes by a wonderful a composer, Shalom Postolsky. The poetry is by Zerubbabel Gilad. Omer, Omer, new grain, silent beams, beams on the mountain. We will combine legends of the...
Omer תבואה חדשה, נעלם אלומות דבר, נאגד אגדים בקר. אומר תבואה חדשה, אומר תבואה חדשה, נעלם אלומות דבר, נאגד אגדים בקר. אומר תבואה חדשה, אומר תבואה חדשה, נעלה מלומות, תלומות דבר, נאגד אגדים, אגדים וקר.
And if I can play one more of these, this is Lamidbar Sa'enu, and those in the choir, we did a rendition of this by a gentleman by the name of Charles Davidson, Sa'enu. Do you remember that? That maybe you do with the kind of the ting ting thing. So there's a beautiful, another one of those melodies that are really inspirational for those people in the early days of Palestine and the Israeli independence. This is Lamidbar Sa'enu. And this is a wonderful version, by the way, because this is truly, well, actually, the melody of Sa'enu is attributed to Yemenite sources. Obviously, we kind of westernize it when we do choir stuff. This is possibly a Yemenite tune, and certainly the players and the singer that sings this are definitely a Sephardic group, or I don't know, you know, it's hard to say Sephardic because Sephardic is, to me, more European, but it's more of a Oriental, and I say Oriental in the sense of Middle Eastern, you know, Yemenite, Algerian, blah, 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 that kind of thing. Melody. What I love about this performance, the woman is trying to tease the guy who's playing that one of those instruments. Ellie, you look at the players in the orchestra like as serious as possible. It's like a funeral, but she's just having so much fun, and it's a beautiful melody, it really is. Okay, so that's that. I just want to check something. Okay, so I'd like to just talk very quickly about the Torah readings for Shavuot. The first day of Shavuot, the Torah reading is from Shemot, Exodus, recounts the incredible moment of revelation at Mount Sinai. where Moses, goes to the top of the mountain to receive the Ten Commandments, and then, as I said before, God descends rather than goes up to the top of the mountain with incredible thunder and lightning and the blast of the shofar. The Ten Commandments are part of this Torah reading, and it is customary, obviously, to stand when they are recited. Day 2, the reading for the second day of Shavuot is Devarim from Deuteronomy, and it gives rather detailed laws of the three pilgrimages on Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. And so when the Torah is taken out of the ark on Shavuot, the text Vayehi bin Soa Ha'aron takes on really great impact. By the way, this is the day 1, examples of excerpts from day 1 and day 2. So day 1, Moses ascends the mountain, God descends the mountain. Day 2, God gives the detailed laws for the 3 pilgrimage festivals. And for those of you, and this is a very appropriate tune for a Shavuot, and that is the tune for Vayehi bin Soa Ha'aron, Vayehi bin Soa Ha'aron, Vayomer Moshe. And that is obviously, who knows that melody? Obviously, all of you are muted, so you can. I see hands being raised. All of you are muted, but let us listen to this Vayehi bin Soa Ha'aron. The composer is Solomon Zulzer, and some of you, I believe most of you in this synagogue know that name, but Solomon Zulzer is a cantor and lived through most of the 19th century, born in 1804 and died in 1890, born in a little town in the Alps, which, boy, would I like to be born in a little town in the Alps. Anyway, a town called Hohenems, and he comes to Vienna and he's the chief cantor, but what makes him very special is that he takes the music, the nusach of Eastern European Jewry, and he tries to Westernize it, but he's very strict about taking that nusach and modulated it into Western sound. So here is Vayehi bin Soa Ha'aron. The pictures that you see, most of them will be pictures of the great synagogue in Vienna. And what's beautiful about this lecture, I can say that some of you not only know this music, that's your performance of it with our orchestra. So it brings back some really great memories. This is Vayehi bin Soa Ha'aron of Solomon Zulzer. We can talk more, but you know what I might do is give a lecture on the Zulzer-Lewandowski connection, maybe in June or something like that. It could be fun. I mean, I have a prepared one for that. So the next thing we want to talk about 1,000 years ago, there were poet cantors living in the Jewish communities in the Rhine Valley, composed incredible poems piyutim, they're called, and piyutim are liturgical poetry for the Shabbat and holiday services. A few of them, and right now we can definitely say only a few of these piyutim became staples of the Ashkenazi poetry. Rabbi Meir ben Yitzchak, who was the Shliach Tzibur, the cantor of the congregation, was a real major poet among all of these poets. He was active in the town of the Vrooms in the later half of the 11th century, on the eve of the First Crusade, and his masterwork is a poem by the name of Akdamut Milin. It took a long time, but the first time that this Akdamut poem appears in the liturgy is in the first decade of the 15th century. So we're talking about 400 years. The first Siddur, and we know this, that contained this poem was published in 1557. And you know, Akdamut occupies what is called a Misinai tune. Misinai tune in Hebrew is Misinai, means from Mount Sinai, and that's pretty much a lie because it wasn't from Mount Sinai. It was from the Rhine area of Germany that had such an incredible culture of Jewish liturgical, not only music but liturgical communities. So here's by the way, the Misinai tune. There are about 115 of them, of which we probably know now about 8 or 9 of them. And by the way, these, you know, if you look at the Machzor of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, or even, and this is the real big thing, or even Shavuot, Sukkot, and Pesach, they once were 5 times as big as what the Sidurim are now. Why? Because they contained these, what we just mentioned, the word piyut, this liturgical poetry, of which, you know, you still can find Machzorim that have these many poems, but the melodies, the Misinai tunes are utterly forgotten. There's no record of them because, you know, there was no publishing then, and it was Baal Peh, means from mouth to ear to mouth to ear, from generation, and they were lost because with the rabbi's intent of making the service more doable, I'm trying to be kind, they cut a lot of this stuff. Much as they cut choirs and whatever. We won't go further than that. Okay, so the Misinai tune for Akdamut is Akdamut milin v'sharayut shuta avla shakel naharman urshuta. Raise your hand who's recognizing that tune. Okay, a bunch of you do. So that thus, I should say, opens that famous and enigmatic piyut of the Akdamut Milin. By the way, it's a very long poem. It's in Aramaic, and it is, believe it or not, 90 rhymed lines. 90 rhymed lines, and in Aramaic. So it's a huge poem. And if I can just, some of you in the English, before reciting the 10 Commandments, which we do on day one, obviously I said, from the Torah portion, I first asked permission and approval to start with 2 or 3 stanzas in awe of the Creator who creates and ever sustains. And these some beautiful lines out of this that you may even recognize. Even other poets take these lines in their own poetry. He has endless might not to be described. And here is the statement that I've heard in other sources. Were the skies parchment, were all the reeds quills, were the seas and all waters made of ink, were all the world's inhabitants made scribes. The glorious God of heaven and earth alone formed the world. Without exertion did he perfect it. Basically, and I can go on and on. The point is, no amount of ink, even if the oceans were filled with ink, it could not describe the greatness of the Creator. Okay. By the way, just one more word about the word piyut. Okay. So the word piyut has a kind of a similarity to the word poesis, which is the Greek word poesis, meaning something done or made, and also is kind of cognate with the English words poet and poetry. Piyut, poet, poetry, poesis. Okay. So the coinage is fascinating of this text. And so, the Biyut is a kind of almost a creative form of prayer. It's not part of the structure of the service from an organic point of view, but it's additions, okay? Additions to the service by these wonderful Cantor poets, starting in the 10th, 11th century. Okay, so let's just play a little of the Akdamut Milin, just a little of it. This is with a wonderful choir, what is it called? Zamir from Boston. They do a very nice job, and this is a little dissonant, but that's, what's wrong with a little dissonance? Created, I believe it's Josh Jacobson who created this version, but it does have the melody, the Misinai tune of the Akdamut, and it goes like this. Hear the melody? I'm going to turn it because we've heard that melody. I want to talk about Azharot, but in other traditions, there is other poetry other than the Misinai poetry, the Piyutim, and we're talking about the Yemenite traditions or the African area. So they, instead of Akdamut, Yemenite Jews, for example, read one of several versions of a ketuvah, which is a marriage contract. But this marriage contract is between Israel and God, modeled on the traditional format for a Jewish bride and groom. It generally includes prophetic verses alluding to the covenant between God and Israel, and substitutes the gifts between God and Israel, Torah, Tefillin, Talit, Shabbat, and everything else, for what a bride and groom normally promise each other, and lists God and Moses or heaven and earth as witnesses. So it's invariably, all of these texts are dated Sivan 6th, which is, a Shavuot. And a special group of these religious poems are called Azharot, and they summarize the 613 commandments in rhymed form. The literature is so fascinating and colorful. And this is not a knock, but we know almost nothing about this stuff. Oh my God, there's so much to learn. So these are called azharot, which are warnings, because the numerical value of that word azhara is 613. They were composed by Shlomo ibn Gabriel, who was 1021 to 1055. And he was really a great poet of the golden age of Spain. So Sephardic and Oriental congregations include this Azharot poetry in the Musaf, or the Mincha afternoon services, and they talk about the commandments, which is what you do on Shavuot. Shavuot. Let's just listen to a little of what this.
מזה וזהו אוצר חוכמת ועדת ראשית קניינהו בואי לשאול היום את מי נועץ ויבינהו, מי ייתן ידעתי ואמצאהו, גובה שמיים ממעונותם, גולתהו עלתה.
Megillat Ruth, the book of Ruth, is read in the morning services on the second day of Shavuot. The main character is a Moabite woman by the name of Ruth, who is married to an Israelite man who dies suddenly. And rather than return to her Moabite family, she follows her Jewish mother-in-law, Naomi, back to Bethlehem. Her declaration of fidelity to Naomi is really one of the powerful declarations in our liturgy. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, and there I will die, and I will be buried. Thus and more may the Lord do to me, if anything but death parts me from you. In Bethlehem, Ruth is as good as her wonderful words. She cares for her mother-in-law, and then she goes on to marry a Jewish man, and ultimately becomes, I don't know, the grandmother or something, a few generations before David, but supposedly King David comes from her loins. I'd like to just, if I can, I have no voice tonight, but I'd like to sing you a little bit of this wonderful poetry. Vayehi bimei shefot hashoftim, vayehi ra'av ba'aretz, vayelech ish mibeit lechem Yehuda lahagur בשדה מואב ובאשתו ושני בניו, ושם האיש אלימלך, ושם אשתו נעמי, ושם שני בניו מחלון וכליון אפרתים, מבית לחם יהודה, ויבואו שדה מואב, ויהיו שם. וימות אלימלך איש נעמי, ותישאר היא ושני בניך. Few more sentences. ויסעו להם נשים מואביות, שם האחד עורפה, ושם השנית רות, וישבו שם כ10 שנים. וימותו גם שניהם מחלון וכליון, ותישאר האישה ילדיה ומאישה. ותקום היא וכלותיה, ותשב משדה מואב. היא שמעה בשדה מואב, כי פקד אדוני את עמו, לתת להם לחם. ותצא מן המקום אשר הייתה שמה, ושתי כלותיה עמה. ותלכנה בדרך לשוב אל ארץ יהודה, etc. It goes on and on. Not really that many. As I said, 4 verses. There's a friend of mine in Israel, just to let you know, there's a guy by the name of Daniel Halfon. He's actually retired now, but I want to play the same Megillat Ruth with the Sephardic trope, which is very, very different. That was obviously the Ashkenazic, and I'm being general, but that was generally the Ashkenazic trope. And here's an example of the Sephardic trope. He's playing around with his microphone and everything else, but it's fun. Hazan Daniel Halfon.
והנה בועז בא מבית לחם, ויאמר לקוצרים, אדוני עמכם, ויאמרו לו, יברכך אדוני. ויהי בימי שפוט השופטים, ויהי רעב בארץ, וילך איש מבית לחם יהודה.
Okay, and that's an example of that. I want to do one more thing about Ruth, if I can. This is a beautiful poem by Nurit Hirsch. I don't think we'll play the whole thing because I want to, I don't want to waste, not waste your time, but it's already 8 o'clock and I'd like to maybe 10 more minutes if you guys are okay with that, 10, 15 minutes. This is a poem also by Nurit Hirsch. She left her people and her home following a heart order. Al Amzer with Naomi Halacha, and fate in the fate of a stranger, and fate in the fate of a stranger. Do not hurt me to leave you. Come back after you, for whither thou goest, I will go. I will follow you. Do not hurt me to leave you. Come back after you, for whither thou goest, I will go. I will follow you, and we will return in the fields of the winds. Shibalim will then go out to gather. Shibalim then will go out to gather. The Moabites in the fields of Boaz, because her heart was so strong, do not hurt me to leave you. And, this is by Nurit Hirsch, who still is living. She must be probably around 80 years old, something in that area. And that's in these days young, as far as I'm concerned. So she is a real songstress of Israel. Everybody looks at Naomi Shemer, who wrote some beautiful songs, but Nurit Hirsch is certainly an equal. And let's listen to a little bit.
לשוב מאחרייך, כי באשר תלכי אלך בעקבותייך, אל תפגעי בי לעוזבך, לשוב מאחרייך, כי באשר תלכי אלך בעקבותייך.
And she goes on in the verses. What I want to play now is in the Hasidic tradition. They have a very special way of making music. I'm just going to play these 2 pieces. These are with some kids singing. It's really a lot of fun. Torah tziva lanu Moshe, Morasha Kehilat Yaakov. And this is from Devarim, chapter 33, verse 4. And this is some boys singing it. Here we go. No, that's not it. Let's try this way. Here we go. And now we have just one, we're almost at the end, Tabachartanu. You are the one that shows us, and this is with a relatively aged Rabbi Schneerson with his Lubavitch crowd. He really gets into the music. I mean, really gets into it. The melody, I don't think you recognize, but you might. But he really, I want to show you the way he really. The funny thing is, Atavachatanu, you have chosen us from all the nations. I'm not sure I would set it to this tune, but that's the beauty of music, because music has the ability to, at the same time, travel with the text, but give it meaning that it never intended in a lot of ways. And that's another subject matter, and a fascinating subject matter that I would like to actually look into, how text is treated, or how text treats music, or how music treats text, in both ways. So this is the Atavachatanu, and watching Rabbi Schneerson go nuts, go absolutely nuts. Wow, that's all I can say. This is one second. I want to talk about this piece. So amongst Sephardic Jews, there are many additional traditions that add to the wonder and joy of this holiday. There is the custom of staying up all night to study portions of Torah. And certainly we have that in our synagogue, the Leil Shavuot study session. And also the Zohar, which is a mystical book, which is also called Vilada, from the Ladino word meaning to guard or to watch. And there's the festive dairy meal. We have to talk about food, which, in the Sephardic communities, burekas and other favorites. In many Sephardic congregations, the reading of Ruth is preceded by reading or singing, as I mentioned before, of those famous azharot, the enumeration of the 613 commandments. These and many other Sephardic Shavuot customs are now vanished, not anymore. In the world, in a recently translated and published Ladino language memoir, the well-known 19th century journalist, publisher, and musician Sadai Betzalel Alevi describes a scene in Salonika during the last century of the Ottoman Empire. And I will read. My father was an observant Jew. One Shavuot Eve, and I want you, while I'm reading this, to understand the incredible outdoor agricultural implications of this holiday. I mean, those of you in Florida can really appreciate this. Well, actually, we can too now, because, we can actually go out too. But, in the winter, well, anyway, I better not go there. but I could think about moving there. You never know. One Shavuot Eve, this is the chronicler. My father went after dinner to attend a study session according to the custom of all the Jews, when they all went to their synagogues and no one stayed home. That time of the year, nights were shorter. Dawn broke early around 6:30. Some people would come back home to eat the cheese pies with some rice pudding, sutlach, and then go to sleep until 1 or 2 p.m. Then others, what a beautiful holiday, others went touring the parks, while it's funny, lower class people with wicker baskets filled with cheese pies, rice pudding, raki, which is a drink, hard-boiled eggs, went with their families to parks on the outskirts of the city to eat, get drunk, and fall asleep on the grass. This was the celebration of Shavuot, by the way, okay? Most of them returned home sick. That's what he said, okay? Highlighting the customs in Salonika, more than half a century later, on the eve of World War II, poet Buena Sarfati describes a similar scene in the Salonika Shavuot. Here he goes. And this is kind of like a poem he writes, but Bes Sinar is a large garden. One can walk for miles and never see its eternity. On Shavuot, we sit under the tree with the wife and the children. We bring baskets filled with food, without forgetting the rice pudding dessert and the nachmias uzo, which are kind of a rice. Let us drink to the health of Daniel Amar. The Salonican rabbi and historian Michael Molho describes the joyous atmosphere in his native city on Shavuot, also Salonika, in his book, Traditions and Customs of the Sephardic Jews of Salonika. Quote, they would pray and spend the night of the festival in holy readings and songs of joy. They would then arrange to spend some time outside the city in the middle of the green fields under a blue sky. Very early, they would leave the city via one of the gates in the city walls, taking with them a basket full of provisions, which are cheese pies, hard-boiled eggs, mutton with peas, cheese pies and mutton with peas. Wow, I guess they have to take 2 bags. Anyway, I'm just reading, various salads, and above all, the famous sutlach prepared with goat's milk and well-cooked, so that the cream pudding tastes on the light coffee color and the surface is full of wrinkles. And he writes like that, well, don't even. Actually, naturally, there's no shortage of raki, which is the alcohol drink. Look, though the customs of the Jews of Salonika horribly came to an end with the Nazi occupation, and they basically annihilated the community. Matter of fact, we have I can't remember his name. I believe his last name is Levy, and he was a member of the Emmanuel Synagogue, he was, I think, related or friends to Rachel Saul, the wonderful singer, who had some Salonican relatives. But, inspired to preserve the memory of these communities destroyed by the Nazis completely, not only in Salonika, but in Rhodes, all those Greek Jewish communities. There are descendants of those communities who tried to preserve this spiritual and intellectual accomplishments of their ancestors. And this Ashrehem Yisrael, a celebration of Israel. Again, a song, Piyut, sung on Shavuot.
بخشم به تو ای عزیزم دشمنت سازم تباهی أشرخم 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 إسرائيل זכותך تورای موشه زخوت جمع خبری بر ما رسان به سورا از آمدن یشوع عشر خیر عشر خیر عشر خیر اسرائیل.
And I hope that all of you have a wonderful, when this holiday descends on us on Thursday night, whether you go to shul or not, or if you take a walk or dwell in your garden that you cultivate, maybe next to your home, in your backyard. Those in Florida obviously have that. I want to just wish you a Chag Sameach. You can eat artichoke pasta, cheese blintzes, challah for Shavuot. If you make Shavuot challah, you can do it in the shape of a flower, or mushroom tortellini with yogurt, vegetable quiche, all sorts of cheese and desserts with as much liquor as you want. It's a beautiful holiday. What I want to emphasize is
showing all the things to eat for
it's
Shavuot.
an agricultural holiday, and it's a really beautiful holiday. Don't enjoy yourselves. It could be a lot of fun, So thank you all so much for this.
Chag Sameach, Chag Sameach.
Sameach.
Everybody.
Thank you, Cantor.
Thank you, Cantor.
Thank you.
You, Cantor.
Very enlightening. Enjoy the evening. The Yankees aren't playing tonight, so we don't have to worry, but hopefully they'll keep winning.
Oh, the Yankees aren't playing tonight, so he doesn't have to worry.
Take care, everybody.
Sorry, I was late, Joseph, with the graduation.
No,
and
it's okay.
everything.
It's okay. Take care, everybody.